Welcome to your next episode of Faith Infused Leadership. My name is Meredith Banca, and I'm your co-host, and I'm pleased to introduce to you the founder of Faith Infused Leadership, Debbie Heiser. How are you doing today, Debbie?
I'm doing great. Thank you. The sun is shining, and it's a fabulous day.
Oh, I've been waiting for the sun for such a long time, so I couldn't be more happy about that. So today we wanted to have a conversation really around the services that you offer to your clients. And I'm really interested to learn about this because it's more than just this show of Faith Infused Leadership that you offer. It's a lot deeper than that. So tell us a little bit about what you share with your clients.
Yeah, thank you, Meredith. I'm going to break this down into a couple of different things. So part of what I do from a service side of it is that I do provide coaching, and that coaching through Three Vines leadership or consulting and leadership development is really designed about helping people understand and pinpoint what's standing between them and their goals. So this could be personally, or it could be within the business itself. And I specialize with small to medium-sized businesses that are scoping or growing. Because when you start a business and you're a solopreneur, or you have one or two employees and you grow to 70 employees, the structures that you have to look different for that. And so that kind of plays into the faith-infused leadership, because I help people find clarity on what their why was behind why they started the business in the first place and what they want their business to stand for, and then make sure that those processes are set up to match that. And in some cases, people just get in their own way. And then in other cases, there just really are systematic things that are broken, that it just is a matter of having a third set of eyes come in and take a look at that. So I offer that from a small business to medium-sized business perspective. And then I also work with solopreneurs. And what I love about working with solopreneurs is we actually get to dig a little bit deeper, because with a business, we tend to work with multiple people in that business, as well as observing multiple things like culture and communication and operational processes. Where when we're working with an individual, typically we have to get to the center of what's holding that individual back from expanding their business and growing, whether that's in revenue, whether that's in clients, whether that's in impact, whatever it is that their key performance indicators are. And so I love digging into that and helping people around their money story, about figuring out whether or not the values that they themselves hold dear match and align with what they're doing in a business. And it could very well be too that they just have some past history with certain things. I find this with sales a lot of times, where they think of sales as pushy or something to be pushed onto somebody, versus you really have a service that somebody needs in their life. And so that's kind of what I do with individuals and small businesses. The other part of what I do is workshops, and I partner with someone actually in Spokane. We've started something called Awaken the Best You, and it's designed specifically for women. We're doing another conference in April in Spokane. We're hoping to take this to some other cities as well, so look for more information there. Cool. And it's designed really to help women get out of their own way and figure out where they're stuck in certain parts of their life, and how we can help them with some inner game and outer game planning in order to get unstuck and move forward in that. Then I have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was gonna ask you a question, but to finish up and tell us about the last piece.
Yeah, so I have two other workshops that I'm working on. One that will be in December in Fort Lauderdale with a cohort from Gonzaga, as well as two professors from Gonzaga, called Foreseeing the Future. And it's about utilizing one of the characteristics of servant leadership, which I mentioned in the last segment, around foresight, and being able to really understand slowing down to understand what's potentially coming forward. We have to be able to listen, not just to what's happening in our minds, but in our whole body, what's happening externally, internally, to understand where business might be heading in the future. And it's some pretty remarkable stuff that was actually developed by a gentleman out of MIT. And so that's some really exciting work. And then the last one that's really new for me is this Faith Infused Leadership Conference. And I am comprising a 3-day conference right now that will be small and very intimate, about 20 people total, where we'll dig in and really start to have conversation around what gets in the way of us acting out our faith in the business world. And what are some of those fears that are holding us back? And I've developed some different models to go with that. And one of those is the 3 pillars of leadership. And that is God, self, and others. really understanding and knowing and having that full faith relationship with God is a first and foremost. And then we have to really understand ourselves as leaders. And then in order to understand other people, knowing who we are and what we stand for, then we can start to discern and uncover what other people are like. And really all three of these workshops kind of have a similar vein.
Mm-hmm.
In the respect that my mission is to help other people live out their calling, whether they're believers or not, what God has gifted them to do, and to go forward and use that so that they feel like they're bringing value to the world and have passion around what they do. So that, in a nutshell, is what I'm doing.
Right. So it sounds like there's three main components of it. So it sounds like you do a lot of individual and group coaching, either somebody that's a business owner or somebody that's a solopreneur, potentially even bleeding into their team if they needed that to happen. So that's kind of one area you concentrate in. The other area you concentrate in is really obviously faith-infused leadership, this show and the new pieces that are coming with that. And then it sounds like you've got awesome stuff happening on the conference side. So lots of diversity there and lots of people that you can serve with that work. My question is, how has your life experience really prepared you to be able to serve people in this way? Maybe you can tell us just a little bit more. We talked about it the last time, but maybe you can tell us just a little bit more about how you've gotten to this point where this is your passion and how you're choosing to spend your time professionally.
Sure. I mentioned before that I always felt like I was kind of in training in my life for something, and it finally felt like it was coming to fruition. I started out actually in the education field, and excuse me, I started a pilot program in the state of Missouri where I taught in the juvenile detention centers there.
Oh,
and
wow.
so that was kind of the start of my innovation, liking to create things. Excuse me, this cold has gotten the better of me. And then after that, I went into actually working for Sprint Publishing and Advertising, selling Yellow Pages. I became a district manager there. Then I started up the training department in Kansas City for that segment of Sprint. Sprint actually sold that segment, and I decided to stay in Kansas City. My mother was very ill at the time. And so I stayed in Kansas City and went to work for Citibank. And so it was a really great experience because I was a big fish in a small pond at Sprint Publishing. Mm-hmm. And when I went to work at Citibank, we had 300,000 employees internationally across the globe. And I became a guppy in the ocean. And so really understanding how to maneuver in that is very different from a domestic to international. I had some great experiences there, not only with learning and being able to coach executives and learning leadership in both of those companies, but also had the great opportunity to help manage an offshore group. And so understanding that cultures are very different as well. And then once I decided to leave there, we were actually given an option, and I'm not a hot, warm weather girl. So we ended up moving to North Idaho, and I started working in a small business as the CFO and still do some of that work, and then started my own business out of a project that I think I mentioned in the last show around kind of faith and how does that work into what we do. And I had friends that were asking me for business advice, and I thought, I bet I could do this. So I felt like all of this was a stepping stone to provide me with the tools necessary, whether that be things that I learned at Sprint Publishing, whether that be things that I was certified in at Citibank, whether that was as a small business and or in my master's, as I got my master's learning tools there, that all of those things were to equip me for what was coming. And I feel like I'm still a servant leader in practice. We never reach the ultimate, we're the best of the best, in my opinion, because we're constantly learning. And if we stop learning, we're dying. So and what
I love about your experience is that everyone that you're coaching, you have the opportunity to say you've kind of been there and done that, right?
Yeah.
So you've worked in the big corporation, you've had those management level jobs, you've worked in a small business in a leadership position, you've started your own business. So you really have a very universal, experiences that are letting you serve the people that become your clients and the people that are ultimately watching this show. the thing that I like to think about when it comes to understanding what people do, there's what you do, and then there's how you do it, right? There's the process that you go through, and then there's the benefit that the people that you work with receive.
Yeah.
So I'd love to just take a few minutes and talk about maybe a client story, somebody who was stuck. You mentioned that earlier, and I think everybody's felt stuck at some point, right? So walk us through a client experience where you helped somebody go from stuck to unstuck.
Yeah, absolutely. And Meredith, I want to touch back really quickly too, because when I think about my experience, and I don't want this to sound unhumble, but I understand what it's like to be that district manager on the front end. And I understand what it's like to be an executive. And I understand what it's like to be one of 3 women out of 14 sitting in an executive room. So I've had multiple opportunities to kind of be in different roles in those companies and to really observe and see just the way those dynamics play. So thank you for recognizing that earlier. And then as you talked about some of the things that we do, I'll give you a couple of examples. I had a woman who really was wanting to sell her business, and she wasn't quite sure how to do it. It was a service industry. And she reached out to me and said, would you help me figure out what I need to do in order to sell my business? So we got together and we actually included her office manager. And, because this office manager was the one really executing on the plan. Because when you have a service industry, it's not only the service you provide, but it's the people that provide that service that really is what you're selling, that ultimate kind of passion that they have around the business, so on and so forth. So we got together, we created a business plan. Now, not a financial business plan. There's a difference. It was a very tactical, here's what we need to do in year 1. Here's what needs to accomplish in year 2. And that went from everything to figuring out systems and reports so that she could figure out financially where she stood, to making sure she had the right talent in the right positions. And I'm happy to say that she actually, after we worked together, about a year after that, she actually sold her business. And will be exiting. There's certain contractual agreements to stay on until that service piece is over, but she will be exiting that business here pretty soon. And so to me, that's a success story.
Yeah. And let me ask you a question there, because that sounds like a solopreneur opportunity, right? Where you're working with somebody who had employees, but they were the single owner of this business. Do you find in your work that oftentimes those solopreneurs have reached a level of success because they have just an incredible talent in their niche, but they haven't necessarily had the depth of experience to know how to do certain things? Like, I'm imagining this client never sold a business before. So how would she know how to sell a business?
Right. She purchased the business. But what's interesting about that is I want to answer that as a yes and no, meaning that in this case, I would consider her an entrepreneur because she did have 7 to 8 employees, where when I think of a solopreneur, it would be someone that's all on their own. Like they still own the business. But another example would be I worked with a retail store, and as we were looking at things, it's a little different because you're looking at processes and you're looking at procedures and how they go about doing those things, versus individually kind of figuring out what's causing them to be stuck. You still do some of that. And I tend to work with the business owner because they're typically the decision maker. But like in this case, when I worked with this retail store, I worked with his 8 or 9 managers and met with them to kind of understand where they were at with the vision, but also to talk to this person, because talking about both of those examples, the theme that tends to run by is that they don't necessarily know their niche that well. There's some that are really into that niche and they get it. But for the most part, entrepreneurs are innovators. And so I will write a book about this someday, but entrepreneurs have this and I'm one, we have this interesting thing where we like to create new things. We like to have them, up and running. But then when we have to maintain it, we get bored. Because we're innovators. We want to innovate and create something else new. So part of what I do, excuse me, is go in and help those entrepreneurs remember why they started it to begin with. Reignite that passion for them. And then if they want to go out and start something new, For instance, this retail owner started something new, and then his wife started something new, and he was helping her with that. And part of it was to source the store. So business wise, it made complete sense. But then he was able to go do that. We hired a store manager to then take over the store for him. And so there's infinite possibilities to make these dreams come true. So typically I do work with the business owner. And I would say, in all fairness, I work by the 80-20 plus or minus 10 rule, that 20% of the time, those people are in a niche and they know that market really well. Like this retail store owner, he knew that market really well. It didn't necessarily mean that's where his heart was. Same thing with this woman with the service industry. She really knew that business, but her business was more about being innovative and wanting to reach out and do other things.
Mm-hmm. And I heard you say in these examples that you work with both men and women. And I think that's important for us to clarify, because you are doing some women specific conferences, but with your Three Vines consulting group, you work with men and women as clients.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what other common thread would you find if you were to look at the body of clients that you're serving? What other common threads do they have beyond the component of faith, beyond being, in business? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. And what's interesting, and I want to clarify, Meredith, I actually work with people that have faith and people that don't. Okay. To me, it's not exclusive. Meaning that I want people to see the light in me and potentially ask questions or have it plant a seed for something later that may come up with them. And so I've had some fantastic clients that aren't necessarily professed Christian, but I feel like I've made an impact in their life in some way, shape, or form that has set the ground for something later for God to do with that, because he's ultimately in charge of all of that. So, but at the end of the day, I feel success when I feel like I've made some type of impact that I was supposed to, that God's calling me to do. Mm-hmm. And so I do work with men and women, and I completely forgot your question as I went into that piece.
No, I was asking if I am imagining people are going to be watching this and going to be drawn to you and what it is you do. And they're going to want to try to figure out, hey, am I a good fit for Debbie's work? Can she help me? And so I think it would be interesting to talk a little bit about other common threads that you've noticed among your clients. So I'm assuming you're kind of seeing some of the same topics or the same solutions that people are searching for.
Yeah. Thank you, Meredith. My mind is a little medicined up here with this.
No heavy equipment for you.
Yeah, exactly. So actually I do see common threads, and a big one is that we self-sabotage ourselves. We see sometimes these obstacles as obstacles versus opportunities. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it just takes a third set of eyes to come into it and say, what is that? And is it our critter brain taking over, saying we're going to die if we take this next step forward? Or, because our critter brain, really our survival brain, thinks we can't have change because that's something different. Mm-hmm. And so it pushes us into that survival mode. So when we push back on something, typically it's that part of our brain that is taking over. So that inevitably happens to everyone. I'm sure it happens to you. I know it happens to me. And we do certain things to self-sabotage. So I do have some clients that say, you are really helping me with clarity. I'm pretty clear now on what I want to do and how to execute on that. But I want to keep coming to you because I need you to hold me accountable. I need for you to continue to help me get rid of those things that I look at as obstacles. I have other clients that they just need clarity. Part of what they might do to self-sabotage is the one thing they really want to do, they're clear on it, but they add 15 other things that are great ideas, but it convolutes what they're truly meant to do. And so helping them realize, okay, maybe we need to push that to the side, hold that for later. Let's keep stepping forward in this. So I really think it's about helping people pinpoint what stands in the way for them of their goals and being able to get to those goals. And sometimes what I find, 9 times out of 10, people have not taken the time to describe what they really want. They can very easily tell you what they don't want, but that law of manifestation is we sit and think about what we don't want, and guess what manifests?
What we don't want.
Absolutely. Excuse me. But we have to take the time to really define what we do want. And I will tell you 9 times out of 10, that is one of the more difficult exercises that my clients do. And I help them through that. And sometimes it's through meditation. I have what I call a toolbox of different things that I use with clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to customize it based on what the client needs. So Meredith, if you came to see me and you said, I really want to do this in my business, I don't know how to get there, then I pull out my toolbox and whatever you're ready for. And I really, really try to tune into God and have him show me which direction to go with this. 9 times out of 10, every toolbox, every tool I have is used at one point in time or another with a client. It just depends on when, is dependent on the client itself. So I really try to customize that.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately that's what it is helping people gain clarity so that they can go out and live what they're called to do and be passionate about it. And, because life is too short to be unhappy about life and feel like you're just living for the weekends. I joke because I have some friends that whenever I call them, I'm like, how you doing? Oh, I'm living the dream. And I'm like, really? I want to change that for you because I am living my dream. So when I can say that and authentically mean it, like that's what I want for other people.
Yeah. Which is amazing because life is way too short, way too short. And we want to help as many people as we can to live in that space of just happiness, being
absolutely
present and happy. The other thing I'm noticing that you're talking about is you also work with businesses kind of throughout their life cycle. It doesn't sound like you work with people that only have an established business or that are in the middle of an exit strategy, but also people that are maybe just starting out or maybe that are in the middle of a pivot to something completely different, because all these tools really seem to apply to all those situations.
Yeah, they do, Meredith. And that's what the beauty of it is for me. I love diversity of work. So for me, I love to be able to work with clients in any area of that cycle of business. I have some people that have been working in corporate America that want to start a business. So we've been working on some of those main things, even so much as a logo, a branding, those types of things. And I send them to other resources because that's not my genius. But, looking through that startup cycle and getting them to start, I have some that have just hit a crunch and I'm a fixer. So they have issues that are going on in the business and they really honestly don't know why something is going wrong. And 9 times out of 10, it's around the people aspect of it, whether it be culture or communication or leadership within the business. And so you're exactly right. Any life cycle, whether it be a solopreneur who's all by themselves or a company 70 up to corporations that need some leadership development or succession planning. So
yeah, that's awesome. So if someone wanted to find out more information or get to know a little bit more about this, I'm sure you must have a website or resources that we can point people to.
I do, Meredith. I'm on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram as 3V Consulting. And I have a website that is 3V as in Victor, and 3 is all spelled out. So it's 3 all spelled out, V as in Victor Consulting.com. And it shows all the services, all of those things. It even tells you a little story about me and kind of where I came from with arithmetic all the way to now helping businesses. And I also have some blogs out there. So I encourage people to take a look at it because we're all on this journey together. So
for sure. And one last question, when somebody reaches out to you via the website or Facebook or however they choose to contact you, do you have like an initial consultation you do with people that's complimentary to see if they're ready for you and if working with you is a good fit?
Yeah, I do, Meredith. I actually have 2 things. There is a Find Your Why tool that you can download for free off of my website. It'll pop up and it will add you then to our mailing list. And you can get that and download that for free. And then there's also buttons on there that you can sign up for a free consultation. It takes you straight to a calendar that shows when I have availability that you can sign up for, or you can just email me also at Debbie at 3V Consulting Debbie at 3vconsulting.com. And you can email me there too, and we can set up some time. But the easiest is to click the button and set it up through the Acuity calendar. So.
Well, that's awesome. I'm really looking forward to diving into some of the work that you've talked about in the next episodes that we're getting to film. And I'm really glad that we had the chance today to talk about all the things that you offer and the different clients and businesses that you're able to help. So for today, that's our episode of Faith Infused Leadership. I'm your co-host, Meredith Banka, and this is Debbie Heiser, the founder of Faith Infused Leadership. We'll see you the next time.
Thanks, Meredith. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.